Hello friends, welcome to Star Explainer. Tales of Herding Gods Part 365 and 366 explains based on novel. So let's start explanation. The dragon Qin got a fright. 5 million rings aren't even 10%. Does that mean Mother Earth has lived for at least 50 million years? Qin Mu was still counting the growth rings as he said, "The number you mentioned is too little. This wooden rod is just the core of the primordial tree. This isn't the entire trunk. Who knows how many layers are on the outside?" With a conservative estimate, the tree core could be displaying only 10% of her actual age. Yang got a fright as well, as this implied that Mother Earth was at least 5 billion years old. "Young master, if this wooden rod doesn't show Mother Earth's real age, why are we counting the growth rings?" Yang was puzzled. Qin Mu continued counting as he distractedly said, "The goal isn't just counting the growth rings, but determining the age of this treasure, so that we can decide what to refine it into. Also, the growth rings hide the secrets of Mother Earth's early years. For example, this set of growth rings are very close to each other, showing that roughly 2 million years after Mother Earth was born, there was a major incident that caused the primordial tree to almost stop growing. This means that the primordial realm was facing a calamity at that time. The life forms after the beginning didn't know of the matters that happened before Dragon Han. No one would be able to find out unless the ancient gods reveal it. That was the ancient primordial era, and the world didn't have records of that era." Qin Mu carefully completed his count of the growth rings and said softly, "The core of the primordial tree spanned more than 76 million years, within which there were 10 calamities that caused the primordial tree to almost stop growing. It seems that during the rule of the ancient gods, the primordial realm wasn't peaceful. However, these ancient gods were the most powerful existences during the ancient primordial era. How did they encounter such dangers? Unless they killed each other, or could there have been some other powers? Logically, the ancient gods were the most powerful during the ancient era, and there had been nothing able to threaten them. Mother Earth's existence was on par with Earth Count and Heaven Duke, and her abilities were only inferior to the ancient Celestial Emperor. She shouldn't have encountered any danger in the ancient primordial era unless Earth Count, Heaven Duke, or ancient Celestial Emperor attacked her. However, during that period, their conflicts hadn't reached the point that they were unable to exist alongside each other. Hence, it was impossible that they tried to kill each other." Qin Mu thought for quite a while but couldn't figure anything out. The core of the primordial tree has so many growth rings. It will be very difficult to refine it into my divine weapon and attune it to a state where I can control it at will. Maybe I can imprint rune markings on each year's growth ring, one formation, and one heaven on every growth ring. That would be more than 76 million formations. Just the energy of the formations would be enough to destroy heaven and earth." Qin Mu was full of fighting spirit, but soon, his expression darkened. There were too many growth rings on the core of the primordial tree, and he didn't have sufficient knowledge to imprint formations on each and every growth ring. His accumulation of knowledge hadn't reached such a profound level. "How about I use it as a spear? However, I'm not proficient with spears. How about a flying sword?" He gave it some thought and tried to channel vital qi into the core of the primordial tree. Following this, his expression was as black as coal. His vital qi had already recovered to its peak and wasn't inferior to a god. However, when his tremendous magic power poured into the core, it was like clay oxen entering the sea, gone forever. There was no way to fill it up. Mother Earth had indeed given him a remarkable treasure. Even existences on the Emperor's throne realm may not be able to refine such treasures. However, he was unable to invoke the power of the core of the primordial tree. Qin Mu continued to execute his vital qi, and finally managed to levitate the core of the primordial tree. However, the wooden rod was too long. After he performed a few stabs, he was out of magic power. No wonder Mother Earth was in such a hurry. Qin Mu stretched out his hand and grabbed the rod, laboriously swinging it a few times. He realized if he were to use it as a spear, he lacked a spearhead, and if he were to use it as a rod, it would be too long. If only I could shorten it a little. Just as he thought this, the core of the primordial tree immediately shortened by quite a bit. Qin Mu was taken aback and said, "Shorten a little more." Again, the core of the primordial tree shortened by a little. Qin Mu said, "Continue to shorten a little more." The core of the primordial tree had shortened until it was only 3 feet. Qin Mu brandished it in his hands, treating it as a sword. It was so much easier to use. He couldn't resist but to delightfully say, "Lengthen." Thud. Suddenly, the core of the primordial tree in his hand expanded dramatically, turning into a long staff that managed to stab the top of a mountain that was hundreds of miles away. The staff created a narrow hole in the mountain as it exited through it. Qin Mu got a fright. He forcefully tried to pull it out, but was unsuccessful, so he helplessly said, "Shorten." With a whoosh, Qin Mu involuntarily flew off the dragon Chilin's head as the shortening rod dragged and smashed him into the top of the mountain, creating a loud boom. The dragon Qilin and Yanga were astonished. They saw that the impact had created a crack on the mountain peak. After a while, Qin Mu jumped out from within the mountain peak, looking very miserable. Qin Mu's heart stirred, and he took out his sword pellet. It flew and landed on top of the rod, becoming the spearhead. The spear then followed him wherever he went, its thickness, length, and hardness all in a state of flux. It looked as though a big python was floating and circling around his body, absolutely terrifying. It seems that this core of the primordial tree is quite all right. Qin Mu turned and flew back, exclaiming in admiration as he put away his sword pellet. "It's a pity I can't transform it into a wooden sword, as I'm unable to kill anyone with it. I'm unfamiliar with spears, so it's a pity this weapon is in my hands." He stored the core of the primordial tree in his Dao Tai sack, as Yanga stepped forward to help him tidy up his messy attire. Qin Mu took out a small jade bottle, opened the seal, and used his vital qi to draw out a drop of the primordial liquid. "Yanga, this is for you." Yanga was surprised and delighted, and she quickly swallowed the primordial liquid. The dragon Qilin looked on with lots of envy. Qin Mu said, "Fatty dragon, you're still unable to suppress the primordial liquid's energy, so even a drop will kill you. I have put away a drop for when you are older." The dragon Qilin agreed and was relieved. With the core of the primordial tree, maybe it's possible to save big senior brother. Qin Mu found himself alone and took out the peachwood hairpin. He faced the surging river and activated the hairpin, and the vast and mighty celestial river gushed out and merged with the surging river. After Cripple saved him, he told him what human emperor Qi Kang saw at the surging river. Green deity of the eastern sky tried to drown Wei Suifeng after capturing him, but Wei Suifeng fused together with the ghost ship and escaped. When they were in the Eastern Celestial Palace's sphere of influence, Qin Mu hadn't wanted to alert the Eastern Celestial Palace. Now that Mother Earth dared to appear, it meant that he was out of the Eastern Celestial Palace's territory. Hence, Qin Mu wanted to see if it was possible to use the peachwood hairpin to save the ghost ship, together with Wei Suifeng, from Celestial Venerable Ling's divine art. The divine art in the peachwood hairpin was activated, and a fog immediately rose from the heart of the river, its mists looking like they came from the past as the river water churned and surged. The surging river and celestial river used to be one body that was then cut into two. Today, it was reunified. Immediately, apparitions of all kinds appeared as strange light radiated from the river, brightening up the sky. Large ships with overlapping palaces, countless gods and devils, and a myriad of apparitions surged forward, all sorts of deafening noises clashing together. These apparitions represented the history of the surging river, the people and buildings of the past, as well as the historical incidents that happened. This was all driven by celestial venerable Ling's unchanging divine art, bursting forth all at once. The celestial river and surging river trembled violently, and suddenly, the entire celestial river rose into the air, flying towards the sky. The 1,000-mile-long river surface floated in the sky as apparitions of all kinds appeared. These floating palaces seemed as though they rose from the ashes of history to materialize in this era. Boom! Buildings, gods, and devils from each and every era clashed as countless fragments fell from the sky. It was an incomparably astonishing scene. The fog was getting thicker as a ghost ship appeared among the mists. Black mists covered its exterior, along with chains circling the ghost ship like dragons and large pythons. However, they didn't touch the ghost ship. The hand that held the peachwood hairpin was shaking violently. Qin Mu quickly used both hands to grab the hairpin and stabilized his body. Even so, the peachwood hairpin felt like it was going to slip out of his hands. Wei Sui Feng! Qin Mu shouted loudly, arms burrowing out of his armpits as he held onto the peachwood hairpin with all his might. Big senior brother, why are you not out yet? The ghost ship appeared hazily as it moved through the black fog, nearing him. The space surrounding Qin Mu appeared more and more unstable, and it started collapsing. Each and every era seemed to overlap, and with that, the palaces, gods, and devils. Even the ghost ship showed signs of crumbling. On the ghost ship, a middle-aged man appeared at the bow. He opened his mouth and said something, but the echoes of each and every era appeared at the same time, making it extremely noisy and difficult to make out what he was trying to say. Qin Mu freed up a hand and quickly took out the core of the primordial tree, shouting, "Enlarge." Whoosh! The core of the primordial tree expanded rapidly towards the ghost ship, as though it was trying to build a bridge between the past and the present. The current length of the core of the primordial tree was already immeasurable, but the ghost ship among the black fog was still far away. On the ghost ship, Wei Sui Feng tried to fly onto the primordial tree, but the moment he flew up, his body dispersed and reappeared again at the bow of the ship. It was as though he had never left. Map! His voice was faintly heard. Qin Mu was unable to hold onto the peachwood hairpin anymore, and could only disperse his magic power. The celestial river immediately broke in two, with one half vanishing as the surging river fell from the sky. The ghost ship, the large ships, the palaces, and the countless gods and devils rapidly retreated and faded into history. The fog also shrunk quickly, soon disappearing without a trace. The rod of the core of the primordial tree fell into Qin Mu's hand. Qin Mu looked around as the trembling space suddenly stabilized, returning to a calm state, as though the apparitions that happened a moment ago were just illusions. The peachwood hairpin is unable to pull the ghost ship out of celestial venerable Ling's divine art, unless the map is the only thing that can save him. Qin Mu was stunned. He put away the peachwood hairpin and shouted, "Yang, quickly bring us away." Yang quickly transformed into the dragon sparrow, picking up the dragon Qilin and throwing him on her back. Qin Mu also got on her back, after which, she spread her wings and immediately took off. Right after they left, the surrounding space warped, and many strange-looking and strong gods arrived. They surveyed the area, but didn't find anything. Suddenly, a god raised a gate. The gate opened, and Son of Heaven Yin walked out, taking stock of his surroundings. Black deity, strange apparitions burst upon the celestial river. History was reenacted, and the broken river was reconnected. "Do we need to report this to the celestial heavens?" a god asked. Son of Heaven Yin frowned and said, "The celestial river that was broken into two was rejoined." The god said, "The other half of the celestial river suddenly appeared, and after a while, it disappeared." Son of Heaven Yin inspected the area and shouted, "This is a serious matter. check it thoroughly and find out which monster is inciting trouble. I will personally report this matter to the celestial heavens. Those gods and devils left one after another. Son of Heaven Yin turned and returned through the gate, muttering softly, Celestial Venerable Ling, ghost ship. Can't the world have some peace? Who exactly is going through the old grudges of the past? The primordial tree was verdant and lush, and it enshrouded the vast territories of the primordial realm. The many heavens in the skies of the primordial realm revolved around this primordial tree. Looking at it from afar, one may not think much of it, but the closer one got to the primordial tree, the more one would realize how magnificent it was. Even though Mother Earth was already dead, this primordial tree still possessed an astonishing amount of vitality. The gods of the celestial heavens gathered divine metal from the heavens and built the grandest and most spectacular palace in the crown of the primordial tree. It was built according to the specifications of the celestial palace. It had the jade pool, jade capital, and the tens of thousands of halls and palaces within, and it was referred to as the celestial palace of the primordial realm. The true body of the ancient celestial emperor was within the celestial heavens, while Celestial Venerable Yu, as the weapon used to suppress the primordial realm, remained in the primordial realm, and lived in the numinous sky hall of the celestial palace of the primordial realm. The celestial palace was extravagant beyond compare, yet at the roots of the primordial tree, it was the darkest and most sinister place. The army of the celestial heavens had piled countless corpses of gods and devils of the primordial realm there, using them as nutrients for the primordial tree. Within the mountains of corpses and sea of blood laid the prison of the primordial realm. The prison was built on the most sinister and the filthiest land of the primordial realm, and the gods of the celestial heavens used white bones to build the walls and create the cage that would be used to imprison the most dangerous criminals of the realm. Here, neither the sky nor the sun could be seen, and a cold wind blew about in waves. It was extremely chilly and damp inside. Furthermore, there were too many bodies and bones of gods and devils, and the ground was covered in godly and devil blood that didn't dry up. Because of this, when they fused together, it constantly resulted in the birth of demonic creatures from the filth, which would then roam about the prison. It was rare for the heavenly gods of the celestial heavens to come down here, and only the jailers, prison guards, and judges of the celestial heavens would reside there. The jailers, prison guards, and judges of the celestial heavens were devil gods of the Yudu bloodline, so while the filth of this place was unbearable to others, it was quite comfortable to them. At this time, however, there were quite a few guests that had come to the prison. A woman dressed in exquisite court lady's attire was furrowing her brows, as she looked on while a guard held and washed a newborn demonic creature in the blood pool, covering it entirely in blood. Even after it was cleaned in the pool by the guard, the demonic creature was still screeching noisily. The godly and devil blood on the creature's body flew in all directions, and the guard then lifted it up high before opening his mouth wide to eat the creature. The woman hurriedly turned her face away, not daring to look at the sight. Senior Sister Yun Huiyang, the prison guards here are devil gods born of Yudu, so the demonic creatures that were born of this filth and darkness are their food. To you, these demonic creatures are extremely disgusting, but to them, they are incredibly delicious food. A youth standing beside the woman smiled warmly and said, especially the newborn demonic creatures, they are even more delicious. Yun Huiyang covered her mouth and her nose, frowning. This prison is too savage. It isn't a place for people to be in. Why is that overlord body of eternal peace still not here? If we deal with him quickly, we can go back and report on our mission. The eyes of the prison guard from just now lit up, and he grabbed a demonic creature from the pools of blood. Holding it up, he chuckled at the youth, saying, "Young Master Dao Yu, this is fresh, do you want to eat it?" The youth called Dao Yu frowned and hurriedly waved his hands. The guard commented that it was a pity and then went to wash the creature in the blood pool again. Suddenly, a burly man wearing a black round-collared long robe walked over and smiled. "Such a delicacy, why aren't you all eating?" Prison guard high god, after you're done washing it, give it to me, I like it. The guard washed the demonic creature clean and handed it over. The burly man opened his mouth wide, his mouth resembling a blood pool, and swallowed the screeching creature. Dao Yu and Yun Huiyang frowned at this sight, and Yun Huiyang shouted, Wei Morjia, that's enough. The burly Wei Morjia ate the creature, wiped away the dirty blood at the corners of his mouth, and then chuckled. You are from the god race, while I am of the devil race, and this is exactly what I eat. As the saying goes, to do as the natives do. Both of you, come and have a taste of this too. Dao Yu's expression changed dramatically, and he changed the subject. That overlord body of eternal peace is Celestial Venerable Mu of the 9 Celestial Venerables. I've heard that back in the first year of the Dragon Han, he imparted skills on behalf of Celestial Venerable Yu that allowed the life forms in the world to be able to become gods. When the way to become a god emerged, only then could the life forms of the world be on par with the ancient gods and have long-lasting lifespans. Us eliminating him under orders, is it? Wei Morjia chuckled. If he didn't impart the way to become a god, Celestial Venerable Hao would have done it anyway. I heard from Master that this Celestial Venerable Mu merely stole Celestial Venerable Hao's credit. A fame-angling fellow like him who transmigrated to the Dragon Han era through chance and coincidence. Celestial Emperor is so muddle-headed to actually let him fool his way into attaining the title of Celestial Venerable. Keep your mouth shut. Yun Huiyang looked around her surroundings vigilantly. There were a huge number of experts who had hurried down to the prison to wait for Qin Mu's arrival after obtaining news of his whereabouts. At least 400 to 500 people were there, and they were all young experts from the celestial heavens. It was a mix of good people and scumbags, and there were ears and eyes everywhere. These young experts were all disciples from the various great celestial palaces of the celestial heavens. When the celestial heavens sent troops to suppress the primordial realm, they had also joined the army under orders, and entered the primordial realm to kill and undergo training. If they had war achievements, then there would be hope for their promotions in the future. Criticizing Celestial Emperor, do you want to die? Yun Huiyang lowered her voice and said, if your words reach the celestial heavens, even Master won't be able to protect you. Wei Morjia laughed. In the celestial heavens, Master has always thought nothing of Celestial Emperor, so what harm is there in speaking my mind? If it were us who had transmigrated to the Dragon Han era instead, we may even be Celestial Emperor, and not just a Celestial Venerable. Even though he said this, he still lowered his voice. Western Celestial Palace, Northern Celestial Palace, Cloud Dispatching Celestial Palace, Sand Border Celestial Palace, Pankavidya Celestial Palace, Metria Celestial Palace, Radiant Light Celestial Palace, Mayawa Celestial Palace. Dao Yu continued in a low voice, the various great celestial palaces of the celestial heavens have almost all sent out their most elite disciples. Our Jade Pure Palace of the Dao sect may not be able to come out on top and eliminate Celestial Venerable Mu. Celestial Venerable Mu enjoys an undeserved reputation. Rumor has it that he is already half dead and is without a soul. Whoever makes the first move will be able to come out on top. If we are slow by a step, we won't even be able to get anything out of this. Wei Morjia continued, in my opinion, we should leave this prison and wait for the rabbit to come to us on its own. When that Celestial Venerable Mu comes, we will be able to take the credit for ourselves. Dao Yu hesitated for a moment. I noticed that quite a few strong individuals from the various great celestial palaces already went outside. Evidently, they have a similar plan to ours. I fear that Celestial Venerable Mu may have already long been killed by one of them. Wei Morjia pressed him, saying, if we stay here, we will definitely achieve nothing. Master already said that if we achieve this accomplishment, he'd recommend us to be under Celestial Venerable Hao's tutelage, and that Celestial Venerable Hao would guide us in cultivating for 30 years. Yun Huiyang and Dao Yu grit their teeth, and the three of them immediately walked towards the outside of the prison. At the same time, another dozen or so people walked outside of the prison. The three of them couldn't help but feel anxious, and they increased their speed, being as swift as the wind and lightning as they sprinted outwards. The three of them ran for almost 1,000 miles, and only then did they shake off the dozen or so people from the other celestial palaces. They were about to speak when they suddenly saw a sea of red light up ahead, and from that area, the sounds of people fighting could be heard. Celestial Venerable Mu has arrived. The three were overjoyed. Wei Morjie made the first move to dash towards that area of red light, and he hurried the other two along. Hurry! There are already people who have made their move. If we are late by one step, Celestial Venerable Mu will have been killed by someone else. His speed was incredibly fast. As he sprinted, his corporeal body was expanding, and within seconds, he transformed into a devil god and bellowed in rage. Dao Yu and Yun Huiyang fell behind by a step, and they were both astonished. Senior brother Wei Morjie's cultivation and abilities have improved by leaps and bounds ever since he came to the lower bound. It is truly as Master said, only through killing can one grow speedily and comprehend even more profound paths, skills, and divine arts. The two of them tried their best to catch up. Suddenly, they saw a strange sight. The Wei Morjie up ahead suddenly had a hole in his head, and light could pass through from front to back. The two of them jolted, and then they heard a voice. Fatty Dragon, Sister Yanga, I have discovered another use for the core of the primordial tree. Look, it can be transformed into an incredibly thin and small wooden needle. If I make use of the wooden needle to execute my sword skills, for example, the simplest technique, stab. Dao Yu's eyes were sharp, and he immediately saw a wooden needle that was as thin as a strand of hair come to the front of his eyes. Dao Yu cried out in rage, and runes flew around his body. He used the great algebra from the celestial heavens Dao sect to construct defensive divine arts, and in an instant, there were a few hundred black tortoise divine shields in front of him. The few hundred layers of black tortoise divine shields were broken through by the wooden needle, and the needle was so fast that it merely gave off a soft pop sound. The wooden needle pierced through Dao Yu's left eye and emerged from the back of his head. Dao Yu felt his head exploding internally, and his primordial spirit disintegrating. He turned his head around with great difficulty, and said to Yun Huiyang, Senior sister, run. Within his left eyeball, a cloud of blood rays was spreading, and Yun Huiyang's figure was reflected on the surface of his pupil. Yun Huiyang was in the middle of activating her Dao sword to slice towards an incomparably fine wooden needle. Immediately, a tiny pinhole appeared on the surface of the bright Dao sword, and in the next instant, Yun Huiyang grunted as a thin ray of blood exploded at the back of her beautiful head. Dao Yu's vision was cloudy, and at this time, he saw an enormous creature that was half dragon and half Qin walking over with fire clouds beneath its feet. On top of the head of this enormous creature, there was a youth with 2 fingers raised, and between his fingers rested a dainty wooden needle. On the shoulder of the youth was a round, fat bird who was pecking a spirit pill to feed the dragon Qin. Celestial Venerable Mu, Dao Yu's vision turned completely dark, and his corpse fell over. The dragon Qin calmly walked in the direction of the prison. He furrowed his brows and looked downwards, to where the devil and godly blood had turned into streams. It was extremely filthy. Within these rivers of blood, there were also many insect-like demonic creatures that were swimming around. So, this is where Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng have been imprisoned. The dragon Qin mumbled, Emperor Yangfeng should be all right, but Imperial Preceptor is a very clean person, how could he bear this? Qin Mu flicked his finger, and the wooden needle flew out soundlessly towards the more than a dozen experts of the celestial heavens, who were dashing in their direction. He replied, Emperor Yangfeng doesn't care if it's clean or not. He can even fall asleep in a pigpen. As for Imperial Preceptor, he does love cleanliness, so he probably can't fall asleep here at all. The wooden needle flew back to him. The dragon Qin continued to move forward. Beside him, countless corpses flailed their limbs as they fell from the air into the rivers of blood. It was as though the rivers of blood were overflowing from a pot, and countless demonic creatures were stirring up havoc as they fought aggressively amongst each other for the corpses within the rivers. If this core of the primordial tree could transform into a wooden sword, then it would be too powerful. Qin Mu sighed and suddenly gripped onto the wooden needle as he said, "Grow." The wooden needle remained just as thin, but in a split second, it grew to a length of 100 miles, resembling an undetectable thin string. Qin Mu gripped tightly onto the 100-mile-long thin string and executed a sword technique. Several young celestial heavens experts, who were 100 miles away, were still clueless as to what just happened when they were suddenly sliced into several pieces. Even when executed from 100 miles away, Qin Mu's sword techniques remained extremely precise, such that no one was able to avoid them in time. Furthermore, the core of the primordial tree was really so thin that it was almost impossible to detect. This treasure that Mother Earth gave is really good to use. Qin Mu couldn't help himself and praised it again. They finally reached the prison, and a prison guard stopped them in their tracks. The guard stood atop a city gate that was forged from an enormous skull and looked down at them from high above, shouting out, "Identify yourself." Qin Mu of Eternal Peace. Qin Mu declared his name before saying, "I'm here to visit the prisoners." The prison guard was astonished and didn't dare to neglect them, hurriedly opening the city gates. The skull that was almost 100 yards in height opened up its mouth to let them enter. The guard then said, "Celestial Venerable Mu actually dares to come to the prison, your courage surpasses many. Celestial Venerable Mu, please enter. There are many good friends within the prison who are waiting for your arrival, and some have even waited for 4 to 5 months." Qin Mu walked into the city, and he saw the few hundred experts turning to look at him one after the other with sparkles in their gaze. Celestial Venerable Mu, someone was struggling to suppress his excitement, his body trembling while he mumbled. Suddenly, a young god flew forwards and shouted out, "There is only one Celestial Venerable Mu, but there are a few hundred of us, so how should we split this?" In an instant, there was a commotion as everyone started to discuss animatedly. Everyone. Qin Mu waited for a moment. They were still unable to come up with any rules and regulations for the situation, so he yelled out, "You don't have to discuss anymore. Look at what's in my hand." The commotion stopped, and everyone looked towards his hand only to see Qin Mu pinching a tiny wooden needle. Qin Mu laughed and said, "Enlarge." Boom. A wooden pillar of 100 miles in length and several hundred yards in diameter suddenly appeared. Qin Mu raised it up and crushed along the whole length of the prison. He flattened his surroundings with a single stick, and God knows how many were pulverized. The wooden pillar vanished, and the celestial heavens experts, who were lucky enough to survive, flew up into the air. They were filled with extreme terror, as they hurriedly tried to search for where the pillar could have disappeared to. Qin Mu turned to the prison guard, who was dumbstruck, and asked, "Where is Jiang Baigui imprisoned?" The prison guard felt a chill go down his spine, and he hurriedly replied, "Celestial Venerable, please follow me." He led the way, and suddenly, a corpse fell out of the sky and smashed down by his feet with a "pack" sound. The prison guard was startled, and he hurriedly raised his head to look up. From the skies, corpses fell like rain. It was as though the many celestial heavens experts had met the formless life-taking impermanent spirits, and then became corpses that fell out of the sky. The core of the primordial tree flew back silently. The guard had planned to observe carefully, but he couldn't tell where Qin Mu had hidden the core of the primordial tree. After some time, he led Qin Mu and the rest to the front of White Bone Throne Hall and said, "If you wish to visit Jiang Baigui, you need to file a record with Judge Yang. Right at this moment, a god walked out of the white bone throne hall, his face full of smiles. Celestial Venerable Mu is a celestial venerable. Why does he need to file a record? You may fall back now. Celestial Venerable, the great prison is full of dangers, let me guide you down personally. Qin Mu expressed his thanks. Celestial Venerable, there is no need to be so polite, I am undeserving of this. Judge Yang hurriedly returned the courtesy and smiled. You are a Celestial Venerable. From the past to the present, there are only 9 who deserve the title of Celestial Venerable. I don't deserve such courteousness. Celestial Venerable, this way, please. Qin Mu followed him as Judge Yang brought them to the entrance of the great prison, which was built under the roots of the primordial tree. In one of the roots that looked as big as a mountain, there was an opening, a door made from wood carved from the primordial tree. Security was tight, the door heavily guarded by many soldiers. After entering the door, they saw a wooden staircase meandering downwards. Hanging on both sides of the walls were the skeletons of gods and devils, providing illumination. However, the god light and devil light emitted by these skeletons were too dim. Judge Yang, how do I address you? Qin Mu examined his surroundings and asked. Junior is called Yang Shaoqing. Judge Yang smiled. Junior is just a nobody in the celestial heavens. Celestial Venerable Mu is likely not to have heard of me before. Qin Mu's heart jumped. He then laughed. Left Assistant Minister Yang Shaoqing of the celestial heavens, skilled in mental divine arts. The one who tricked and trapped founding emperors Mingju Heavenly King Qin Shu in the Imperial Gate divine knife for 7 million years. Judge Yang was shocked. Celestial Venerable has actually heard of me before. Qin Mu said, I was also trapped in the Imperial Gate divine knife for quite a few years before escaping through great effort. Within the Imperial Gate divine knife, I saw the beautiful wine that Left Assistant Minister used to trick King Qian Shu. Left Assistant Minister is the first I have seen who is proficient in mental divine arts, incomparable. The Dragon Chelin said, I drank your wine before and became sworn brother with Qian Shu. Yang Shaoqing laughed. Celestial Venerable has overpraised me. I don't think I can be considered as number 1. What Celestial Venerable considers spirit, I consider consciousness. The top practitioner of consciousness divine arts is actually Crimson Light Era's Crimson Emperor. Qin Mu's heart moved slightly. Although Crimson Emperor had imparted the 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness to him, he didn't impart his Emperor's throne divine art techniques. Crimson Emperor was, after all, a figure of the early ancient times. His undying God consciousness placed emphasis on cultivating the 3 primordial spirits, hence strengthening one's primordial spirit. However, in the development of consciousness divine arts, he was far behind the talents of the new generation like Yang Shaoqing. Yang Shaoqing could be considered the celestial heavens' most powerful existence for consciousness divine arts. The official positions of Yang Shaoqing and Qian Shu were the same. One was the Left Assistant Minister of the extraterritorial celestial heavens, while the other was founding Emperor Celestial Heavens Left Assistant Minister. Qian Shu was proficient in Yudu divine arts. His talent and attainments in Yudu Devil Dao were extremely high, and he was on par with Son of Heaven Yin. On the other hand, Yang Shaoqing was proficient in consciousness divine arts. Him being able to blindside Qian Shu was as easy as blowing away a speck of dust. Qian Shu also treated him as an old rival, implying that his abilities were extremely high, and that he had fought Qian Shu more than once. Both of them should have cultivated the system of the great Tao of Yudu, except that their approaches to cultivation were different. The celestial heavens have always been short an emperor's throne-level consciousness technique. It's a pity that Crimson Emperor has been dead for 400,000 years, and that his 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness is long lost. Yang Shaoqing said, "The celestial heavens have placed their hopes on me, expecting me to create an emperor's throne consciousness technique. However, I have failed repeatedly and was punished by being sent to this great prison to be a judge. Only when I arrived at the lower bound did I realize it was silly of the celestial heavens to search high and low for the three primordial spirit undying God consciousness. It's as though every divine arts practitioner has learned that before, with the difference lying in the level of attainment." Qin Mu smiled. Yang Shaoqing said, "Since Jiang Bai Gui imparted this technique to me, I took good care of him and didn't let him suffer. I have spent this period comprehending the three primordial spirit undying God consciousness, and have benefited greatly. Celestial Venerable is able to survive without a soul, which should be the effect of the undying God consciousness, right?" Qin Mu laughed. "This is the technique I imparted, so of course I know it." Yang Shaoqing laughed heartily. "In that case, I shouldn't show off in front of a master." There was a warning in his words, telling Qin Mu not to show off his lesser skills in front of him. It became darker and wetter as they ventured deeper underground, and there was a strong stench in the air. A blood river flowed down from the outside world, meandering forward as it went past the cages. The roots of the primordial tree were intricate and complex, entangling to form cages and trapping the prisoners inside. The slender roots were like chains, locking up the gods and devils, piercing their corporeal bodies and primordial spirits. These prisoners were wailing miserably in the cages, as the blood on their bodies flowed down along the roots, and into the blood river. The blood river was filthy and foul, and from it, many demonic creatures were born. They looked like strange gigantic worms with numerous hands and legs, and they were attaching themselves to the bodies of the prisoners, sucking and feasting on their blood. When the prison guards were around, these demonic creatures hid behind the backs of the prisoners in the shadows. After the guards left, they popped out their heads and crawled back over, continuing to suck blood. The security in the great prison was very tight, with guards constantly patrolling back and forth. Qin Mu examined the roots of the primordial tree carefully, and he saw that they were incomparably strong. This primordial tree was Mother Earth's true body, and the hardness and sturdiness of the corporeal body of such an ancient god were comparable to an emperor's throne divine weapon. Only a treasure like the Imperial Gate divine knife would be able to chop it into two. Also, the runes on the surface of the roots were Mother Earth's true body's runes of the Great Tao. Hence, there was no chance one could escape from this place. Those that were trapped inside the prison included many existences of the Jade Capital Realm and the Numinous Sky Realm. They were the leaders of the various races under Mother Earth, ruling over the different heavens of the Primordial Realm. Now, however, they were prisoners. The guards took good care of them, using a big basin to collect the god blood and devil blood that flowed down from their bodies. After the basin was fully filled, they carefully transported it outside. Their blood is very useful, the best coloring. Yang Shaoqing, who was leading the way, said, "When building a god city, runes are imprinted on the city walls to stabilize them. For that, blood from ordinary gods and devils can be used. Only the palaces of rulers are qualified to use the treasured blood of strong practitioners at the Numinous Sky Realm and the Jade Capital Realm. The blood pigments of the various races are different, and when using the treasured blood of strong practitioners to color the walls, it will never fade and will remain fresh forever. Hence, this is very popular. Also, there are some gods in the celestial heavens that like to drink blood. However, they don't like ordinary blood, so they look towards my great prison for supply." Qin Mu narrowed his eyes. Among the guards in the great prison were gods skilled in the art of healing. They were treating the wounds of these prisoners, preventing them from dying so that they could continue to produce this so-called coloring. "Yang Shaoqing, I'm going to kill you." A prisoner with a Chilean head and human body gave off a few furious roars and shouted, "If I manage to escape, I'll have you chopped into 1,000 pieces." Yang Shaoqing laughed loudly. Suddenly, an eye appeared at the heart of his brows, and a lotus flower flew out of it, entering the mind of the leader of the Qin race. The leader of the Qin race instantly seemed dazed. Then, a gentle expression appeared on his face, and he stopped making a din. Consciousness divine arts can make him forever be entranced in a blissful and mesmerizing dream state. Yang Shaoqing explained to Qin Mu, I used my divine art to create a realistic-looking fantasy world within his consciousness. In that world, he gets whatever he wants, so he will never escape out of it. Through great struggles and effort, he can even become the celestial emperor in the fantasy world I have given him, making him very happy. Through this, his pain will be lessened, allowing him to happily produce the coloring. The dragon Qin shuddered. He could recognize the leader of the Qin race. Previously, at Mother Earth's earthly palace, the leader of the Qin race had guided him on cultivation. Never did he expect such a powerful existence would end up in such a state. In name, this place was a great prison. However, this was actually a production factory for god blood and devil blood. The cages of Jiang Baigui and Emperor Yang Feng are right in front. Yang Shaoqing led them to 2 cages. Qin Mu peered inside and saw Emperor Yang Feng, an eternal peace imperial preceptor. They were trapped in the cages, but hadn't been pierced by the roots. Emperor Yang Feng held a monster that was screeching noisily. He opened his mouth and was about to eat it when he saw Qin Mu outside the cage and was stunned. He quickly stuffed the monster behind his back and sat upright. In the other cage, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was executing his flame divine art, roasting a monster until it was half-cooked. He, however, was calm when he saw Qin Mu and didn't hide the monster. Left Assistant Minister, could you allow me some private time? Qin Mu smiled. I have some words that aren't convenient to say in front of outsiders. Yang Shaoqing didn't move, smiling faintly. Celestial Venerable has the title of Great Wizard, so I'll be worried if I leave you alone here. I'm not sure whether others would dare to release my prisoners, but Celestial Venerable would have the courage to. Celestial Venerable was brave enough to cause chaos at the Jade Pool meeting, much less at this tiny prison of mine. Qin Mu had no choice, so he turned towards Emperor Yang Feng, an Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and asked, how are the 2 of you getting on here? Emperor Yang Feng said angrily, why don't you try staying here for a few days and see if it's good? Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, on the other hand, was indifferent towards the hardship and appeared calm. He said, Senior brother, why are you here? I'm here to report that I am safe and sound. Qin Mu smiled. All is well with Eternal Peace, so there's no need for you to worry. I plan to leave the primordial realm and head towards the celestial heavens. I'm not sure if I will survive this trip, so I decided to see you beforehand. Emperor Yang Feng was quiet for a while before replying with a choked voice, head towards the celestial heavens. To be their hostage. Qin Mu laughed loudly. I'm a celestial venerable, so how can I be a hostage of the celestial heavens? Your Majesty must be joking. No, I'm going to the celestial heavens to visit an old friend. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's gaze sparkled. It's a good idea for senior brother to head towards the celestial heavens. One will fight fiercely in a desperate situation, and this may be the only path of survival. Except your body. Qin Mu yawned and said, my body is deteriorating with each passing day. Without a soul, my cultivation abilities are decreasing every day. I can barely hang on to my life and not die. Often, I pass out when I'm walking, with each coma lasting 3 to 4 days. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor frowned. Given your condition, isn't heading towards the celestial heavens courting death? Qin Mu's spirit was becoming poor, and he became sleepy-eyed. I plan to. He suddenly started snoring, falling asleep just like that. Yang Shaoqing was smiling by the side. He didn't speak a word, and neither did he support Qin Mu. Instead, he allowed him to lie down. The dragon Qilin and Yang looked as though they had grown used to this sight, and weren't alarmed. Emperor Yang Feng was choked with tears. Looks like Cult Master Qin is unable to hold on much longer. Yang Shaoqing waited around 3 to 4 days, until Qin Mu gradually woke up. He cried out, "I fell asleep again. How long did I sleep?" Yang Shaoqing said, "Celestial Venerable slept for 3 days and 10 hours. Qin Mu said apologetically, "I actually slept for so long," holding up left assistant minister's matters. "Oh well, this is the end of my visit, I should be leaving. Your Majesty, junior brother, farewell." Emperor Yang Feng, an eternal peace imperial preceptor, rose and bid farewell to him. Yang Shaoqing sent Qin Mu out of the great prison. As the wooden door closed, sealing up the great prison underground, Yang Shaoqing meticulously checked the runic lock on the door. Only then was he satisfied. He then sent Qin Mu out of Whitebone City. Qin Mu turned and said, "Left Assistant Minister, there's no need to send me further." Yang Shaoqing bowed. "Farewell, Celestial Venerable." He looked on as Qin Mu flew off on the head of the dragon Qilin, disappearing over the horizon. He then returned to the Judgment Throne Hall, wanting to write down the details of Qin Mu's visit. Suddenly, he got a shock. Yang Shaoqing's expression changed slightly. He put down his pen and quickly flipped open his booklet, only to see that the rest of the pages were blank. Yang Shaoqing broke into a cold sweat. This official booklet should have contained records of his writings, detailing down all sorts of matters of the great prison. Now, they were all gone. "Celestial Venerable Mu, my consciousness divine art has already reached its peak, attaining 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness, and it is only half a step away from the Emperor's throne realm. You dare to show off your skills in front of me, the Master." Yang Shaoqing's consciousness surged forth from the heart of his brows, and he shouted, "Break." His consciousness divine art trembled and burst out in 4 directions. In the next instant, heaven and earth abruptly changed. It was as though the surroundings had lost color, going from a colorful picture to just black and white. Following this, the black and white faded away. Then, Yang Shaoqing found himself not within the Judgment Throne Hall, but still standing in the great prison, in front of Emperor Yang Feng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor's cages. Yang Shaoqing looked around his surroundings and was alarmed. Not far from him, guards were transporting the treasured blood of gods and devils and replacing the big wooden basin. Beside him, monsters were breeding and crawling out of the blood river, quietly moving onto a prisoner's body to suck his blood. Yang Shaoqing retracted his gaze. Qin Mu was beside him, speaking with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yang Feng. His face was full of smiles, as though nothing had happened. The dragon Qilin laid beside Qin Mu's feet, and was sleeping soundly. On top of his head stood a round and chubby green sparrow, who was pruning her feathers in utter boredom. Yang Shaoqing narrowed his eyes and spoke coldly, "Celestial Venerable, the time for visiting is up, you should leave." Qin Mu said, "Your Majesty, junior brother, please stay here safely for now. In the future, there will be a day where you are able to leave. I bid you farewell. Take care." Emperor Yang Feng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said their goodbyes. Qin Mu returned the courtesy. Yang Shaoqing had been following behind him all along, watching him very closely in case he pulled any tricks. Outside the prison, Yang Shaoqing once again inspected the runic lock on the wooden door. This time, he was more detailed but was unable to find anything strange. He didn't care about sending Qin Mu out of the city, and immediately flew back to his Judgment Throne Hall to check his official booklet, heaving a sigh of relief when he found his writings in the booklet. He then went forward to send Qin Mu out of the city. Outside the city, Qin Mu turned and smiled. Left Assistant Minister, there's no need to send me further. Yang Shaoqing bowed and said, farewell, Celestial Venerable. He was stunned. The words he spoke were exactly the same as the previous time, when he was made a fool of by Qin Mu's consciousness divine art. Yang Shaoqing broke into a cold sweat, and his divine art surged forth as he shouted, break. The world again lost color, turning into black and white, which in turn faded away as the real world was presented. Yang Shaoqing widened his eyes and examined his surroundings, breaking into a cold sweat. He realized that he remained standing in the great prison, not far from the guards that were changing the wooden basin for blood collection. Monsters were born from the blood river, secretly crawling into the cages and onto the prisoners' bodies to suck blood. The dragon Qilin remained fast asleep, Yanga continued to prune her feathers, and Qin Mu was still talking to Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng. Large drops of sweat appeared on Yang Shaoqing's forehead, and he said hoarsely, Jiang Bai Gui, are there flaws hidden in the three primordial spirit undying God consciousness that you imparted to me? Within the cage, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor turned his head. His gaze was empty, and he seemed to be in a daze. He looked like a zombie, and his mouth moved as though he was a puppet. The divine arts of the celestial heavens are old and obsolete. The flaws aren't solely from the three primordial spirit undying God consciousness, they also come from left Assistant Minister. You were born too early. From today's perspective, the paths, skills, and divine arts that you have learned in the past are incorrect. For instance, your divine treasures. In the other cage, Emperor Yangfeng turned his head around. He had the same empty dazed eyes, and his mouth was opening and closing. The divine treasures that you cultivated in the past were the spirit embryo, 5 elements, 6 directions, 7 stars, celestial being, life and death, and divine bridge divine treasures. However, the divine treasures of Eternal Peace's reform are very different. You have already cultivated to numinous sky realm. Because your realm has been fixed, you are unable to change your divine treasure's foundation. Since your realm is already so high, there is also no need to change your divine treasure's foundation. Therefore, the flaws in your techniques remain. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor said emotionlessly, this is also the case for Crimson Emperor's 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness, as it is cultivated through the divine bridge. Compared to the present-day techniques of Eternal Peace, it contains major flaws. Emperor Yangfeng revealed a simple and honest smile. The 3 primordial spirit undying God consciousness that Imperial Preceptor imparted to you was unadulterated. However, the undying God consciousness he imparted was Crimson Emperor's undying God consciousness, not the Celestial River Divine Treasure's undying God consciousness. When the foundation is weak, the earth will tremor and the mountains will shake. I begin with the flaws in your techniques. If there are flaws in the techniques, there will be flaws everywhere in the divine arts. The way to break my divine art is to destroy the divine bridge divine treasure, open up the celestial river divine treasure, and recultivate. In the cages, Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng provided the explanation by conversing among themselves. Yang Shaoqing's consciousness burst forth as he shouted fiercely, destroy my cultivation. I'm a numinous sky realm existence, only half a step away from Emperor's throne. The magic power of my cultivation surpasses yours by leaps and bounds. Just going by cultivation alone, it's sufficient to crush all of your divine arts. No matter how remarkable your divine arts are, they are unable to restrain me. Break. Boom. There were violent tremors as the colors of the world faded again. Yang Shaoqing looked like he was being dragged out of water, his whole body drenched with sweat. He was still standing in front of the cages with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng inside. The dragon Qilin was fast asleep, and Qin Mu was talking to Emperor Yangfeng, an eternal peace imperial preceptor. It was as though time had flowed back to this moment, unchanged. Just break. Yang Shaoqing quickly executed his consciousness divine art and shouted angrily, "Let's find out whose divine art is faster." He madly executed his divine art, and the colors of the world faded over and over again. Every time, before the new world could be formed completely, it was hit by another impact. At that moment, space had collapsed into disorder, and cracks increasingly appeared in this discolored world. In the end, Yang Shaoqing executed 1,000 divine arts in a flash. He had exceeded the limits of this world, causing the entire world to fall apart. Yang Shaoqing panted heavily and looked around. He saw Qin Mu standing in front of the cages, his face filled with astonishment and fear. Countless monsters and guards in the great prison had been knocked out from the impact of Yang Shaoqing's consciousness divine art. The dragon Qilin by Qin Mu's feet was also knocked out by the impact of his consciousness, and was in a coma, with only the chubby green sparrow remaining awake. Yang Shaoqing reached out and grabbed Qin Mu. He was in a rage as he shouted, "You are a celestial venerable, so I'm not going to kill you. Please leave this place immediately." He used his vital qi to pick up the dragon Qilin and dashed outside. The green sparrow flapped her wings and followed him, shouting, "Put down, young master, or I will be rough with you." Yang Shaoqing ignored her, sending Qin Mu out of the great prison and White Bone City. Only then did he put Qin Mu down and coldly say, "Celestial Venerable Mu, farewell. I hope I won't see you again." Qin Mu laughed. "You aren't able to take a small joke. You imprisoned Tian, Shu Heavenly King in the Imperial Gate Divine Knife for millions of years, and I was also trapped there for a long time, but did I get mad?" Yang Shaoqing's expression darkened, and he returned to his great prison and arrived in his judgment throne hall, raising his pen to write down the details of Qin Mu's visit. He heaved a sigh of relief. Suddenly, he felt uneasy and ran towards the wooden door of the great prison. He thought, "Have I really broken through his undying God consciousness? Let me check. I'm unable to tolerate any mistakes." When he arrived in the depths of the great prison, his body suddenly turned stiff. He saw a few guards taking out wooden basins filled with god blood and changing them out with new basins. In the blood river by the side, monsters were born, burrowing into the cages to suck blood. Yang Shaoqing's body felt cold as he struggled to walk forward to take a look. He saw the dragon Qilin sleeping in front of Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yanfeng's cages. On top of the dragon Qilin's head, a bored green sparrow was pruning her feathers. And Qin Mu was in front of the cages, talking with Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yangfeng. Yang Shaoqing shook his head, feeling giddy as his legs became heavy. He could only hold onto the cages for support. What is happening here? He was unable to breathe and dejectedly got down on his knees. He muttered, "Why are you still here? Why? My cultivation surpasses yours by leaps and bounds, so why am I unable to break through your divine art?" The devil god that was imprisoned in the cage beside him suddenly opened his eyes with a stupefied expression, as though he was a puppet being controlled by someone. His mouth moved stiffly as he said, "Because your foundation is incorrect. The biggest reform of eternal peace is the foundation. Your foundation in runes, divine arts, and techniques is all wrong. If you want to break through this consciousness divine art, you need to destroy your cultivation." Yang Shaoqing was incensed, and he reached out and smashed the devil god into pieces. In the cage in front of him, an imprisoned god suddenly opened his eyes and said blankly, "Yang Shaoqing, I was imprisoned in the Imperial Gate Divine Knife for many years. You have only been imprisoned for days, and you're already unable to endure." Yang Shaoqing's anger couldn't be restrained as he killed the god. A guard that was passing by him suddenly stopped, raised his head, and coldly said, Yang Shaoqing, my divine art isn't just the undying God consciousness, there's also the Boundless Calamity Sutra. You are committing a major mistake in thinking that everything is an illusion created by my consciousness. Yang Shaoqing smashed the guard into pieces with one punch and charged towards Qin Mu. Another guard stared at him with a strange expression. Yang Shaoqing, I have discovered the flaws in your foundation and have planted the Boundless Calamity Sutra within your body. It's very easy for you to break through. All you need to do is destroy your divine bridge. Yang Shaoqing's face was black. He quashed the guard into the ground, turning him into a bloody mess. Qin Mu raised his head and spoke emotionlessly, what you are doing now is useless. Yang Shaoqing tore Qin Mu into pieces, and the world turned black and white. However, the familiar scene returned, and it was as though nothing had changed. Yang Shaoqing was dispirited. He sat down on the floor and muttered, there must be a way to solve this, a way that doesn't require destroying the divine bridge, divine treasure. He closed his eyes and racked his brains. Countless days had passed, long enough for Yang Shaoqing's hair to turn white, but he was unable to think of a solution. Suddenly, a guard shouted from outside, Judge Yang, the emissary of Mingju is here. Yang Shaoqing was stunned, but also exhilarated, and he laughed heartily. I see. I was unable to solve your divine art by myself, but when met with an external force, your divine art will unravel on its own. Celestial Venerable Mu, you may be able to control me with your divine art, but now, with someone from the outside, it will become a variable in your divine art. As the number of people increases, so will the flaws of your divine art. He looked towards Qin Mu and saw that he, the dragon Qilin, and the fat green sparrow had vanished without him realizing it. However, Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and Emperor Yang Feng was still in their cages. Yang Shaoqing became slightly at ease and laughed coldly. It seems that they are gone. He headed out, preparing to welcome the emissary of Mingju. However, the emissary had already arrived in the great prison, and his voice came over, saying, Left Assistant Minister, the disciples from various great celestial palaces came here, wanting to deal with Celestial Venerable Mu, but they haven't returned even after a long time. I was sent here to check on things. Yang Shaoqing came forward to greet the visitor, and saw that it was Lu Yinxiu, a disciple of Son of Heaven Yin. He hurriedly said, Oh, it's old brother Lu. The disciples of the various great celestial palaces have already been killed by the hand of Celestial Venerable Mu. He was quite close to Lu Yinxiu. Mingju Heavenly King Tian Shu and Son of Heaven Yin were archenemies. Son of Heaven Yin wanted to personally deal with Tian Shu, but he escaped. Subsequently, Tian Shu severed the horn of Earth Count, and his corporeal body was grabbed by Earth Count, leaving him with only his primordial spirit. Hence, Son of Heaven Yin requested Yang Shaoqing to trick Tian Shu into the Imperial Gate Divine Knife, trapping him there. Lu Yinxiu's expression changed slightly, and he cried out, The disciples of the various great celestial palaces are dead. Yang Shaoqing nodded his head. Lu Yinxiu stomped his feet and said, How do I explain this? The disciples of the various great celestial palaces are dead here, in your place. You are in big trouble. Among them were a few of my junior brothers, the favorite disciples of my teacher, Black Deity. Yang Shaoqing didn't seem to be bothered. The celestial heavens haven't completed the Emperor's throne consciousness technique, so the various great celestial palaces won't dare to touch me before I have cultivated to the Emperor's throne realm. Old brother Lu, did you run into Celestial Venerable Mu when you were on your way here? He just escaped. Lu Yinxiu shook his head and said, I didn't see him. Yang Shaoqing's eyes flickered, and he suddenly said, Old brother Lu, since you are here on Black Deity's orders, then you should have Black Deity's decree. May I see it? Lu Yinxiu laughed. Since when has Left Assistant Minister been so careful? Is it possible that I'm Celestial Venerable Mu in disguise? Although he said that, he still produced the decree of Son of Heaven Yin. Yang Shaoqing inspected the decree carefully. The handwriting was indeed Son of Heaven Yin's, so he became slightly at ease. Lu Yinxiu said, I clashed with Celestial Venerable Mu a few times, and I'm very familiar with his prowess. If he was here, it's likely that he came to rescue Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and Emperor Yang Feng. Are these two still around? Yang Shaoqing said, they are still in the Great Prison. Lu Yinxiu walked forward to inspect, and he stood in front of the cages for a long time without moving. Yang Shaoqing looked at the cages and saw Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and Emperor Yang Feng inside. He couldn't help but laugh. Old brother Lu, what's the matter? Lu Yinxiu's face was pale, and he said hoarsely, the two cages are empty, can you not see that? The two prisoners have escaped. Yang Shaoqing was stunned. He carefully examined Emperor Yang Feng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, and he couldn't tell that there was anything strange. He quickly opened the cages and touched Emperor Yang Feng and Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor, feeling their bodies. He didn't feel that there was anything out of place. Yang Shaoqing's mind was blown. Even a genius of the numinous sky realm like Qin Mu was drunk on the wine created by my consciousness divine art. Celestial Venerable Mu's divine art planted itself within my divine treasures, making the empty air feel like a real person. Fallen. I have indeed fallen. He returned to his senses after a long time, then turned his head and realized that Lu Yinxiu had left. Evidently, he had gone back to report the matter to Son of Heaven Yin. Yang Shaoqing was completely disheartened, and he locked himself in a cage, quietly waiting. Not long after, gods from the celestial palace on the crown of the primordial tree came to detain him. He was beheaded on the god execution stage by Celestial Venerable Yu, a weapon personally controlled by Celestial Emperor. A knife light flashed past as the god execution mysterious knife chopped off his head. Yang Shaoqing's head fell, his primordial spirit gradually withered, and his three eyes slowly closed as the world descended into darkness. After a long time, he felt as though he was roused from a dream. He heard Qin Mu's voice by his ear. Left Assistant Minister, Left Assistant Minister. Yang Shaoqing quickly opened his eyes and realized that he was lying on the floor. Nearby, guards were towing wooden basins full of treasured blood and changing them out with fresh basins for blood collection. Within the blood river, a monster was born, and it burrowed into a cage and attached itself to a prisoner's body to suck blood. In front of him, the dragon Qilin was sleeping soundly, while the fat green sparrow was pruning her feathers. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor and Emperor Yang Feng were in their cages, bidding farewell to Qin Mu. Qin Mu asked in concern, Left Assistant Minister, how come you fell asleep? I'm done with my visit and am satisfied, so it's time to leave. Yang Shaoqing sat on the floor in a daze. Suddenly, he let out an ear-piercing, wailing laughter. It's not real, nothing is real. Even what is happening now is fake. Part 365 and 366 end here. Thank you for watching.